Hey guys, so on this week's episode of Make It with Calvin, I'm going to talk about making some custom wood inserts here for my ON18 layout using a combination of a paper printer, paper, and eventually my laser cutter. So let's dive into it. So in short, this is an ON18 portable train layout that I've been working on, and I'm kind of going for a Western town theme here. So we're gonna have a couple of shop buildings, and the problem is I want to do what looks like track that is sitting in the middle of a dirt road. It wasn't uncommon to see that in towns, and the only problem I have is I'm using Kato Unitrack for this, and that puts the top of the ties where I'm going to be putting the wood for my road crossings at about 3/16 of an inch above the foam. Now there's a couple of options that I could go about doing this. I could try filling the area in with a spackling compound. I could just use my ground cover, which is a mixture of sand and tile grout. But realistically speaking, those are kind of messy and not going to give me the best results. So I just opted to come along and make some 3/16 inch wood spacers. Yes, there might not be a perfect height match between the two, but it is well and close enough that once this gets glued down, it just takes a thin sprinkling of ground cover and everything is good. As for the gaps around the edges, I'm not too worried about that. If I really wanted to, I can fill that in with a spackling compound, but let's face it, going around a little edge is a lot easier than trying to do the whole thing. So with that aside, the very first thing I had to do was figure out the dimensions of this, which is not very simple because this is already glued in place. The only thing that is nice is the fact that the Unitrack has a set centerline radius, which is very helpful. Now obviously the wood inserts do not need to be perfect, so I just used one of my little laser cut template jigs here and held it up and went, okay, that looks like a close enough radius. There is a little bit of clearance, so if it's not perfect on the dimensions, I have a little bit of wiggle room, if you will, with the wood, which is perfectly fine. Once that got done, I then came along and drew the designs up in Adobe Illustrator and printed them out in 1:1 scale on a piece of paper. Now this is very, very handy because I had a couple of times where, case in point, this one right here, everything was correct except for the fact that the back portion of it stuck out too far. The curves were good, but that's not going to be helpful. So very quickly figured out what the problem was with that, came along, printed and cut out this, which is what became the final design here, and knew right away that I wasn't going to have any problems. One thing you will notice is the fact that I have given these just a quick coat of Rust-Oleum driftwood. I am going to come along and paint the edges, which just seem to drink any paint that goes on them. And the main reasoning is this is just really, really cheap plywood that I get over at Ace Hardware and rip to size on a table saw. The idea is by using the cheap plywood, it's just a quick way for me to build spacers, prototypes, things like that. But I also know that it's not going to have the best moisture resistance. Last thing I want to do is glue this down, saturate the area with either scenic cement and or soapy water to cure the mortar, and then have this delaminate and warp and cause all kinds of headaches. So a little bit of work put in to seal this up now should save me a lot of heartache in the long run. So that's how I went about creating custom wood spacers for this scene on my layout. If you're interested in any of the buildings that are showcased here that will be hopefully part of the layout, I do have those for sale over in my Etsy shop. And I will say the sales from that really help the channel out. So hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you here next time on Make It with Calvin.